I'm planning a new artwork today, and the artwork is going to be just a small photograph taken from a trip down to National Park at the back of Kirrawee. And the aim for this artwork is to work on an A3 sheet of paper, but to have the actual landscape only in a part of the paper. I want to have it faded out in the edges, so I'll be working wet in wet. And that's the only way to achieve that, is to have your paper fairly wet. I could have wet the front and the back of the paper. That would allow it to stay wet longer. And I wouldn't have to tape it down then. It would have just stayed on the board. I've done a quick thumbnail of the landscape that I want to achieve. And so just a quick drawing of what I intend to put into the artwork. And that actually allows me to come down in size, as well as watching the actual camera. The phone camera actually reduces a lot of things for me, and I see more of the shapes of what's there than basically looking at a photo that's large. Okay, so that photo was done on really good quality photo paper, and this one's on just a matte paper. So you can see the difference in clarity that you can get from your actual printer if you use really good paper. Okay, so I've just quickly done just a sketch on the paper of what I intend to put on, but not the whole thing. I've only done part of it, and I've got it on the third of the paper, and basically that's the start of the planning for the artwork. So I do plan an artwork for quite some time before I start. Sometimes they work out exactly as I want them, sometimes they don't. So this is the planning part. A3 smooth arches paper, a thumbnail drawing of it on another sheet of paper, good photograph, and I'm ready to get to work and start my artwork. The landscape was going to be disappearing into the edges, so to actually achieve that I need the paper to be wet, and I'm working on the rocks at the bottom at the moment, so I'll just wet out from the edge of the page. I can see something there that's not right. I don't need that line down through here, and I also have noticed that this line here is way too high. I have a problem of exaggerating parts of the work when I'm actually working, so that could come down to about there. That could come down, and so I'm going to be working down the bottom, which is a little bit unusual. Normally I work from the back to the front, and I would normally be working up where the sky is to start with, but I'm not going to do that today. I'm going to work down here because this rock area is so nice that I probably will use maybe some salt on that area. So I'll wet the page down the bottom out to the edges, and that's just water. I don't know whether there's any colour coming out of the brush, which it looked like there was. And just make sure I wet the edges of the page down the bottom. Okay, so the page is wet. I can wet into there a little bit, and now I'll find out what's there. And I've made just a colour that would be almost, I've got a bit of a brown tinge to it, a little bit of a green tinge there. Now all I need is to get the rocks on here, and so I need a lot of water, and I need to just get light colour onto here for the rocks. And so that'll be the rocks coming around in through here. There's a rock that comes up around the top, and this is all rocks. So I'll pick that area up. That's dry up there, so that will give me a hard edge. And this will be just a very neutral colour. That'll disappear out into the water. And so there's no controlling this. It's just make sure that it doesn't have a straight edge in this section round through here. In the photograph that I showed you, this is the rock area here. So I'm actually going to achieve it by doing the centre part of it, but not the actual section over the back there. So that'll be where the water is in through there, so I'll leave that. And that's a little bit dark, so I'll move that on and use the water to get that to put the rocks on. That'll be rocks there. Make sure that edge is not too straight. This is a little bit dark in through here, so I'll just keep wetting that and getting it to get a little bit lighter, because I don't want that too dark to start with. Didn't have to do that. Okay, so that's my rock area, rocks coming out to nothing this way. And so now I'm looking at edges. So it's going to be quite light. There's bits of rocks in here, there's some water, bits and pieces. Now it might change to what this is, but I'm not painting exactly that. I'm painting the look of it and actually just getting an underpainting on the paper. Still, I think this is a little bit light over here, out to nothing. Just let it do its own thing and disappear. Just brushing it out slightly. Now that'll dry. So while that's wet, I'm now going to go to the sky and work on the sky. So I'll wet the sky area, and that will be from here up. That's generally where I work, from the bottom edge of something all the way up to the top, and wet it out. So I've done it in two sort of sections, and this will be getting some blue at the top. And so that blue, I'm using a square shader, which doesn't matter what sort of brush I use, because I'm just putting the blue in behind the trees, and that'll be cobalt. So I'll pick cobalt up and put it on the in where the other colour is. It won't hurt to go in with that. And then I'll actually wet my brush so that I can tell what I've got on the brush now. And this paper's wet, so I'll put some on, get the paint on there, and just brush down. Okay, that can be where the trees are, and I need to brush up, so I'll just wash the brush lightly. Just dried the brush actually. The blue can go across. Now I'll wash the brush because I want to stop that blue. Now this brush has got to be drier than the paper, otherwise we get cauliflowers. So that's brushed up to nothing. So it disappears into that, into the blue, and I've just got a very light blue. Doesn't matter where I stop here because that's got the trees over the top. But this will leave the sky, and of course I'll just get the sky to have a little bit of a rough edge in it, so you can't see where it's disappearing. It can go up a bit higher in a place, so it disappears. If I want that to smooth out, instead of having stripes in it, I can come across it in different directions and just leave that with the blue in the background. Okay, now that can dry until I'm ready to come back and do the next stage of the artwork. I'm going to start working at the rocks here today, which is unusual. Normally I work from the back to the front, being a watercolourist, but today I'm going to work on the rocks because I want them to actually, I'm going to use salt on them, so I want them to be wet and I want them just to have some grey colour on them. So, and the rocks now won't be the rocks that were there originally. They'll be just what I actually end up with, just with brush marks. So that will fade out. Remember, this is fading out into the edge, so I'll just wet that edge so it's going out. Pick up different parts of the rocks. There's a section down through here that I'll make a lot darker. Just put an edge to that. And I'm just putting colour on. Just colour in through there, keeping some of the rocks light, some of the edges of the rocks sort of showing up, just different bits and pieces, but keeping them quite wet. So if they're starting to dry, I'll just drop some more water back into them. That can just go into there. Parts of the shelf of the rocks there. So I've got a bluer sort of a colour now. Well, I thought it was blue. Picked up the brown on the front of the brush, and I'll just get that along through there with the rocks. Different rocks can have different shapes, so I'll just put my brush down, come back here and wet that. I want it to be wet. So even if it goes over that and it's wet, it still will show something when I actually put the salt on it. Salt's better if it's been put in the oven as well, but I haven't done that. I'll just let it come out of the container. Doing rocks this way too, I'm picking up bits, but if it comes out into this area, I want it to be very light. another rock shelf down through here. It can go up to there. Let it disappear out here in places. Now, if it goes out there, it goes out softly. Or I can pick it back up with the tissue and just bring it back in. As long as it's soft in places and strong in others. Let that out. Just so your eye doesn't have to catch everything that you're seeing. Now I just want to get some colour on here. Bit of a bluey colour. If I put brown in it, then it goes grey. That's where the water is in through there. Then there's some rocks up here. There's a rock there. Just different rocks. Just keep changing colours. Put water in. Let it go out to nothing. Now I could get my hake brush again and just take that out that way. That'd be nice if it just went to nothing. Same with this. Just let it go. I want that to finish up with a soft edge, so I'll wet that as well. Okay, so because I did that, I'm going to put some colour behind this now, just to get some colour there so it'll run out into this wet area and do something interesting. So that'll just do its own thing. Okay, salt. Now, a lot of salt doesn't necessarily mean a great pattern. Start up here where it was wet. Sometimes less salt can give you a better pattern. And I've done this before the water so that the water won't have salt on it. So I'll get this done first. Now, if I'm using salt, I also need to seal the paper front and back later. When it's dry, finish the artwork, it then gets a Micador spray. That's the matte spray, permanent matte finish, and I'd spray the artwork evenly across and then on the back of it when it's dry so that it actually seals it. Otherwise, in a wet day, if it's in a frame even, it still will actually re-wet. Now that dries, and then I'll be going on with the next stage. You can see here, I need some to just break that area up there. All right, now the magic will happen with the rocks. It's time to remove the salt before I start work, otherwise there'll be bits of salt roaming around the page. It'll be a bit noisy, but that's how much I need to scrape the page to remove the salt. You can see the salt here, and take that off the page, and I'll just put it in a piece of tissue and get the salt completely off the page. So now I'll rub it over and make sure it's all gone, especially with my hand. I can feel more with my hand than anything else. Make sure the sheet's clean of salt. Okay, so I'll start at the back. Generally I work from the back to the front. I'll leave the water till last, and so that I'll be working up in the back scene up through here and starting out with the green trees that are at the back. And so there's a group of trees at the back that are in a darker green, and so I've got Winsor yellow and indifferent, and that makes my greens from light green, the lightest green, through to the darkest green. I'll have a look at that on a piece of paper and check the colour, and of course it's way too bright, so it needs to be a much darker green, and it needs to be a lot drier. So if I scraped it on the paper for a short while, that would make sure that I'm taking water out of the brush or putting it on a tissue. So up the top here, there's some foliage. So I'll just drop that in places. Up through here, there's trees. Now that's above the blue, but the colour will sort of sit in behind that, framing up the blue in the background. So that's what this section will do. It can get a little bit darker. pick up more blue. That can come down behind the next lot of foliage. So I'll just dry the brush again, that's too wet. Just let that dance around on the page. And I'm just pushing the edge of the brush. That'll come in around some other foliage. I've got a bit of a edge there that I don't like, so I dried the brush entirely. Now I'll just let it move around and get that to come out softly. Okay, so remember the edges of the page are wet, and I'll just start to wet those now so that'll fade out slightly. And that can be wet out through the edge here. Just keep that edge wet and keep this edge wet. It stays wet. Okay, I'll have a look at the top edge now and straighten that out. So now just a little bit of the top edge to refine these, to make sure they look a little bit more like trees, not just marks in the page. Join it up together. Trees don't just have spots of foliage. And they'll come down in the background here. I'll add a little bit of brown to it to change the colour. That'll come down into the scene, and that's leaving areas for other trees. And these now are softening because I'm just touching them with a bit of water because they're so far back that I don't want them to be as harsh as they are, and that just gets some other edges. That's a straight edge, don't want that, I'll come in a bit further. Okay, that's getting softer. Take it out to the water. Do the same here. Take it out to the water. Even if I don't need it, I'll keep wetting that area to create that foliage. In through there, there'll be some branches. So I'll just pick up, they just look dark. They don't look anything particular colours. So when I go for darks, I go for burnt sienna and indethrin. And that basically just brings up a dark value for me. And I'll just come up through there. It doesn't matter where I am, just up through, just to get bits and pieces up through those trees. Too much is too much. I can soften those as well. But it's up through here, out through the edges where you get an actual gap in that. Just a little bit more up through there. Just some foliage in the background. If they were too dark, I could just touch them as I'm working around with the trees. And so a lot of the trees down the rest of the artwork here are just in a very, very light, bony sort of colour. So I've just mixed a colour here with a bit of burnt sienna, just a soft colour. And I'm just going to put that in there and get some colour in behind here, just to get the edges. Now that edge won't be the same, but this edge can come out a bit further into that wet area, down behind the rocks. Now I need to get behind the rocks, seriously down behind the rocks. The blue goes from here up. There's no blue. It does go dark down in through here, but I'll get that in a minute. So get that rough up into the trees. Now the dark comes down into there, and it's a green dark, so I'll get the Winsor yellow and indethrin and put some of the brown in it and get that to come down into this area here from the trees. So that can come down into that area. And remember, it's wet, so it's going to move around. And it is going to move around because I'm going to take the edges of it out. That can go up into the trees as well that way. Down through here into that area. Down through there. Now those edges will be wet because I'm going to come back with the colour that I had down here. It's gone a little bit green, that's all right. There's rocks here, so I'll get down into the rocks. Just keep working with the colour that I'm putting in there. Take some of that out, don't like that. And remember, this stays wet, so if that dries, I'll re-wet it again. Make sure these join in successfully and just keep working with the brush, wet in wet. And that's creating the foliage around there. a little bit of burnt sienna. So this colour is changing as I go, and I need to get some foliage up through here. And I need to get soft branches up through there. Could have some blue in there as well. So if I wanted blue, I'd have to put that in now or put a wash over it later, and I don't want to do that. So I'll just bring this down and work down to the bottom section where there's a big section of brown in down through here. So I've hit it pretty hard with the brown, and I can use that to come up through there with the rigger, a liner brush, and just keep coming up through there and creating trees out of that paint that I put in there. Just keep going with trees out, up through here. They can come up through the top. Just a lot of trees in through there, and just keep using that. Now I need to come down behind the rocks to get that to sit in through there. And there's some darks in behind here, browns and darks down through that area. Could have a bit of green, so I'll pick up some green first and then pick up the dark on the other side of that and start to come in behind the rocks. I probably need it wet again on the edge. That will have to be wet over and over again, just here, just so I don't get any edges. That could be still wet out into that area. So just continually keep wetting edges in or out to get that faded scene. Okay, I've got a load on the brush and I've got to find rocks. So I could find an edge to that rock there by coming in and coming down, coming around that rock, getting an edge, use that edge of another rock and get into that area where I'm into the wet paint. And that was the edge of the water here where there's rocks. Whatever the brush does, I'll leave. That can come down to the edge. That will just come in through there and get that strength. But remember, it's wet here, so I can do whatever I want to do with that and get some darks coming up into that area. So I won't leave that as the back edge of the paint. That'll go into the colour that I've got above it, or bring the colour down to it and let it do its own thing. That'll just go into nothing, come out to nothing. Come out around that edge. That'll do. Okay, so I've got strength. I've got areas now that can be rocks, and so I'll come back to those. And an area that'll go back in behind here in the scene to actually lay that down, and it'll be where the water's actually disappearing in through here. There's a couple of little rocks there, but it'll disappear down in through here and go away very, very slowly back through the artwork. So now I've got some strength. So it's the difference between light and dark texture and things that I'm adding to the artwork. I was talking about getting more blue over here. I might do that now, because while I'm playing down the bottom here, that can dry a little bit of blue up there. So that would put a little bit of cobalt in here, and so I'll bring it into the design and then bring it out. Put some down on the paper and let it do its own thing. Too dark there, that'll lighten, that'll come down behind here. Let it go in behind the trees. Make sure it's not straight at the top. That'll just come down through there and out of the scene. So this caused a cauliflower there, don't mind that. I could bring some of the blue back in over this side, just to sort of get some colour in behind that, so it's not just, the shape is just not a complete circle, that I'm looking for rough edges in the shape. I can drop in, drop out, just again looking for edges. The brush, when it hits the paper, does that spot, but I can get those back out of it by just touching those. All right, continuing back into here. So that just keeps working and dropping colours in before I go to greens. I'm going back to the darks. The darks can come along that waterway now, and so if I get another brush and wet the edge of the water here, just along here, I can get that dark to really get in there as well. So just wet that and just come along underneath it and let water just do its own thing and come up through there. Even if I tilt it, it'll go better. It'll actually run up further because of the fact that it's running into the water. So water follows water. Don't want that line to be dead straight, so I'm just going to drop down a little bit. Leave another area, maybe of rocks. That'll have the blue in it later, so I can create other rocks as I go. They're a bit flat at the top there, but if I just dry my brush off and take that bit out, that would leave it looking like it's broken up and it's not just that funny shape. Okay. Still working in the background of all the trees and bits and pieces in here, so they're either light or dark. You've got a choice of how you do that, but now I'm going to start to build up. This is wet out here and there's more green trees behind there, so I've got a green that's not too dark, and I'll just add some more green out here so that there's more green trees. Okay, looking at edges, shape, edges where I've got dry paint, where I haven't. And coming out just a little bit further. Just tame that green, that blue down just a little bit. Just bring bits and pieces in on the dry paper. So now it's doing other things like leaving areas that are lighter. So you end up with a mixture of all different brush marks. Okay, so I'm still looking for more branches and things through there. So even if I drag a brush through that's just wet, if I drag a brush through there, that'll cause a cauliflower that will actually make lighter branches in through there. So you get a choice of lighter branches or darker. So just keep coming through that area. There could be branches coming up higher. Don't want to go too much higher there, but I can get some foliage up there later. This is still water. Dry the brush. Run it through, but this is a little bit wet, but what it will do is disturb that and actually get branches coming out into that light area in just light green. So you can paint with what you've actually got on here by just using the paint just at the edge of the scene. Just branches coming up through here. Just keep working. Branches everywhere. Okay, I've still got some light through the middle of it, which is really quite nice. My edges here are a little bit straight, but they'll soften out as I actually finish up and get a little bit more out through here. Okay, so now I'm getting into the waterway, or where I've got rocks. That actually was a rock to start with, so I can either leave it in as a rock and leave this as the waterway, or find the waterway now, and that will be basically coming in with the blue in through there while it's still damp around, so I can't really tell what it's going to do, but it's a darker blue, still cobalt, but just a little bit stronger. And I'll start to get the underwash of the blue in, and so the blue will come in through here around the rocks. Could get a bit of a light edge to that rock if I leave that. Just get the water. Now water does a level. If water comes in there, it'll find its own level. It can come backwards and forwards. That'll come down to the rocks. Because it's so light, it could go over the rocks. That won't matter. And so I'll get that a little bit stronger because it's a deeper blue. Oops, deeper blue. Just keep that motion going sideways. Now that'll go in there. I'll put it right in there. And that'll have some of the image of the trees coming into that later. And there's blue at the top here, and it's in different sections. So I'm going to plane that now and put the blue in, cobalt. Okay, and if this doesn't have enough water in it, it won't sort of sit there. So the blue is going to go into there, take a section of it, leave some as rock. So that's going to be rock there. Not a good shape rock. That'll do. It'll come in behind there slightly. I'm going to leave that, and then there's another pool here that's a rock round through there. So I'll leave it as that. I'll let it join up because my rocks now are different to what it was originally, but that's okay. I don't copy the scene exactly. I copy what I can see of the scene and then play in that. So the edge of this has some darker green in it. So while it's wet, I'll get a really dark green. A dark green that's greyed down with burnt sienna is a really nice colour. That'll go in through into the dark. So that'll be in behind here and into the water. Just let it do its own thing. Don't try and make it do what I think I want it to do. Just let it run. That'll go in the edge of that where it goes into the blue. And back over here, there's parts of it where it's got it around the rocks. Try not to make it just a circle of colour. So I'll just bring more of it in to stop that. In round through here. Now when it comes up onto these rocks here, I'll change it into a brown by wetting that edge and getting burnt sienna to come into that edge. So the two edges will meet. Okay, coming into the water now, this does look like it's looking down into the water, and that's what you want it to look down. I've still got a white area here that would be grey, so I'm going to do that now while it's wet because it's going to do its own thing. Burnt sienna in Deathrin is the colour that makes grey from a light grey with a lot of water to a black. So I'm just going to put that on here just to save that from being dead white when I finish. It's now got some colour on it, it can just do its own thing. Alright, what I don't like is the back edge of this. That's just water. Just to come around there and get that back edge off, and that'll go around the rocks and make that rock stand out. And so that's the thing that I'll do later is draw these rocks up properly and work on those. The same with the grey that I put in, that'll go onto these rocks. Just a light grey, just a light colour. I've got different colours now, but that's all right. Just get that not to be completely white. Okay, so now we're going back over here to some of these trees because now it's a little bit drier. I can get some more trees, either grey trees or brown, more grey in some of the bush that you get a lot of grey trees. And I'm using the rigger that way because if I do that, I can just get up through there and get different bits. That can come up higher, up through there. That'll give me more distance if I come up higher. And so if I come down lower, same deal. If I come down to here, I get more trees that are higher because they're closer. They can even go over the top of those trees. So the whole thing here is lots and lots of trees. And that's what you're looking at when you're seeing the bush. Scribble, scribble over scribble. Okay, it's got plenty of trees going on. I don't like that line. Okay, but to change those lines, I don't do it now. I wait till it dries and then come back to it. As I said, this edge is worrying me there as far as it's just dead straight. And so what I'll do is wet this and just bring either colour or something in there. Probably the rock colour, the grey. Just basically pick up a colour and just get something in there with it. That'll just come out softly. Just a little bit of colour to stop that edge. Now to get that to key into the actual artwork, I'll drop some strong colour in behind the rocks, in behind these areas, and make those the top of the rocks. And then it will come out lighter. And so Again, I'll take off that edge, but I've got something coming out from the artwork. And so if I actually bring colour in the other side of that, the same deal. I'll lift those rocks off that area and make them come to the front. So that'll be in there very, very strong. And that is just simply to get these rocks to stand out and have something in behind there. So now you can't tell what I did, and that's the good thing. If you can see what's going on there, then that's not so good. Because then you're looking at just paint. You're looking like here, you're just looking at that area going, well, what is that? Some of it's okay, but too much of it's not good. Don't mind this. That can come out lighter. More as a grey. It's more of a blue-grey now, and I'll just get it out through there. And that's dry, so that'll give me something else. That'll give me another edge. I'll leave this. Could get underneath those, but I'm getting too far down, and then it will get over-painted. Okay, I'll let that dry and then come back to it. Okay, I'm working from the last third down here. That halfway down, I'll do more work down here than at the top. Even though there will be trees that will come in through here and up in there, that will be still classed as this area of the artwork. So I'm not going back into this area because it comes forward if you keep painting at the top. Okay, so I've done some drawing behind the rocks, bits and pieces. So I'll come back there with just the grey colour and start to come in round rocks where I need to separate rocks. I need to take that away, somewhere there. I need to take that away. So I'll just come in round there and just keep dragging that over to get another area in a rock rather than see the whole area there. Just separate it there so it looks like that's a rock itself. Come back down in behind these two here and just get some colour down behind to separate that so that it doesn't have the whole area showing. Down through here, it's where the actual water escapes really. So I'm just going to go into a blue colour and just get it to follow on through there and come down into this area here so that you see that it's gone back up into there. And so water does that sort of strokes to actually show it. These can just stay as they are at the moment because I don't need too much to happen there. I nearly went back down there and just cut that off just to make it a little bit different until I get to the water. So because the watermark happened here, which is not too bad, I'm going to use that to actually put a tree back up into this area, and that tree will be closer to us, so it will have a little bit more strength. I'll use a larger rigger, a larger brush to actually be able to do the trunk, and the trunk will be just in a browny sort of a grey colour, just dirty colour, a little bit of water, and I want it to go into there. So I'm not going to come straight up there because that's what happens a lot of the time. I'm going to bring it from about here and bring it right down near the water. Make sure I don't have too much water on the brush because I want it to be strong. Okay, that'll be strong. So as it comes up here, I'll get it to be bigger as it comes up, and then eventually I'll change over riggers to get to a finer rigger because as it goes up the top, I want it to be a bit finer. Pick up the colour and still drag that up. I need to dry it a little bit on a tissue and still get it to come up through here. The other thing, an interesting way to do a tree is to bring it up with water and just come up with water and then drop the colour into it and just let it run. That'll just run up there and do the tree. If I tilt it, hopefully it'll just go up there and do the tree really nicely for me. Bring it back so that it comes back to the halfway, and then this has never got an end on it. It's never like that where you see an end on it. It's come back, so I'll just bring that back down, get it to go up again, and that's what I don't want. I don't want things to sit there with those ends. And the other way to achieve that is to get the green on the tree quicker and so that doesn't happen. Or do this and paint with it as it's going up there with just the light colour. Okay, just doing some good things there. Okay, back to the thinner one. I've got the thinner one again. Bring this up. Whoops, went a long way. Make sure they cross over. Trees don't just stop where one branch just sort of stops in front of another. Now that's probably far enough. I'll just check down the dark side of the branch, which will be down here, and just make sure it's got some body to it. Bring a branch out where it's just sitting off there, make it a bit stronger, just to make things different as it comes down through there. And as it gets onto the paper, I'll just put some darker brown at the bottom of it and add it to the page, so it just sits in there. Whatever the nearly went on the blue. Whatever the brush does there, I'll just leave that. Now I'm coming up for some foliage, and the foliage will be drier, and so the palette's dry, and I'll see what I've got. Just touch on the page lightly. That's coming out into the light. Stop and start and get different areas to the tree. That's getting wetter, so being wetter, that'll be softer. More foliage. Don't get too much. Okay, just make sure it changes height and the shape that I'm actually achieving with it. And that's going to actually stand out stronger than all the others, so that needs a bit of company with it. It can't stay there with just that on the page. And so therefore there'll be other trees, not much further back, but over this there'll be more trees. They'll be stronger, a lot more paint on the brush, and a lot more drier paint. That'll just add rubbish to the artwork. Just let it dance along the page. And that's giving you more of a closer look to something on the page. So it really sits on the edge of the water there. It's got some strength. It's quite weak in the middle here. So something will come in behind there. So what I'll do is just come in behind with the rigger sideways and just let it scrape the page. See what it does. Just get some branches and bits and pieces in there, smaller things. But because the paper's dry and there's not a lot of water on it, you'll get a little bit more of a softness to the work. Okay, coming back down to the rocks now. So I need to get round some of the rocks and also in the water. I might go to the water next and then come back to the rocks. Okay, so the water has an edge along the edge of the water. It's darker at the top. So I'm just coming along the edge at different areas through there. And then I'll come into the water and it's a dirty green. So it's actually Winsor yellow, enidethrin plus burnt sienna. That'll make the dirtiest green that you've seen. It's got a brown tannin look to it as well. And that'll come in along here, and I hope I get where I come along the edge to that. I won't just fill it in, I'll stop and start. Okay, so that's the edge to the water. It didn't go up, it went up just a fraction there, which is good, but it didn't go up any further. So I'll come back and wet that. And then wet the other back edge of it as well. Didn't really get the edge very well, but that's okay. Just doing something now. And then I'll start to get more of the dark in the water, and it's along that edge. And so I'll add it to this edge now. Just a little bit in places, so that the water's not all blue. Come across the water, and now get some of the actual darks in the water. And remember, this tree was quite strong, and so that bends that way, so it will bend back this way in the water, And then there's lots and lots of other bits and pieces in the water. You won't see many of the green trees. You will see some of the water going that way as well. So you'll get that sort of a, oh, that looks like scribble. Don't do that. There's another tree this way coming out from about there. Depends how windy it is as to what that water does. But you'll start to see the bits and pieces in through the water. I need that to be a bit lighter now, probably a thinner brush. So I've picked up water and still got a dirty brush as far as I know. And I can still get bits and pieces in the water. There's lots of branches, lots of bits and pieces. There's a darker patch there. I'll put that in the water. And so all this has just the different bits in it. That sometimes shimmers too. You don't get the tree exactly dead straight. Just change that a little bit. Change that back edge of the water so you don't see that as strongly. And now I've got burnt sienna and indethrin, and I'm just going to come along the riverbank there and pick up some of that again, even lower than where the water's edge is. So that'll just get those darks in around, goes back up into here, comes down. And so I've worked quite heavily in that area there that gives you the strength. Okay, moving forward to the rocks. There's something I do need to do before I go too far, is not to forget this tree here that has, that's the big rigger. I need the smaller rigger. Brown, bit of burnt sienna in the mix. There's got to be something on this tree because it's too close here not to have something through here on its branches, and lots of different branches in that tree. Just to have something in there because it's very close, but nothing going on. And then I need that to disappear. So that means at the end of it, I pick up my brush, put water on it, hope it's clean, and just wet it so that I take those edges out. That'll give you some foliage. Even that will paint something. Or I can come back and do something over the top of it and get it to go back. All right, back to the rocks. The rocks are a bluey grey. So there's an edge on the rock here that you don't see the whole rock. You see part of the edge to it, which should be there. That gets taken out. The water can come down through there. Underneath this sill, there's a sill of rocks here. That can have some dark on it. That'll lift that up off the artwork. I can leave that. That will make it look like it's got a dip into it if I do that. It'll make that look like it's deeper there. That could be a rock there, as long as I just pick up part of it. And the salt work will do something for you with that as well. You don't have to do everything with the rocks. Separate these two, come in behind on that rock. That can have an edge to that rock. And also I went into there at the same time. I didn't really mean to, but I could have a light edge on that rock by leaving that. Don't think it works, but anyway. Bring that into there and just let that go up onto that rock. Don't want it to be straight. I'll take that out, don't like that. All right, so now these rocks are starting to form, that you're starting to see something in the rocks. What happens here? This goes flat here and the water can be coming back over that. And I didn't see it until I put this up. So between filming, I've actually put this up against a chair and just looked at it for some time to see exactly what I can see. Whether it looks like the artwork's going into the middle, whether you can see that, how far out I've come in the edges, whether I need to go out a bit further, which I think I do. The theory that I generally follow on an artwork is 2/3 painted and 1/3 vacant. So if I have too much white paper around the artwork, then that's not balanced in the area of an artwork, even though it's going to have white around it. So I might even, rather than keep painting out, get a mat and actually get the mat the size that would suit the artwork to bring it into that that equation of 2/3 painted, 1/3 vacant. So where I can see this could come back over the edge there, I've picked up the blue, and that doesn't have to be that blue, but it can have the green in it later, because it was coming down to here, down through here, around that rock, and down into that area and back into here, so that the water was actually coming over that, but it had green in it, and that makes this edge to the back edge of this rock. That makes that edge, and also around the edges of this where it's actually up against the rocks, it has a darker edge in this. And I'll bring it flat so it looks like it's going around that rock and down. And then into the bottom section here. Take that out of it so I can't see what it's doing there. It could actually go over that. That's not really doing a great deal. Just go over it and get that out. Okay, so to get that out, I'll just put some darks over it. Maybe some green darks over that. Just to get that out of the picture so you can't see what's happening there. And now you see the edge to these front rocks. All right, that's taken that out. Now we get to the water here, and there's a bit of a tree over here. When you get at a distance, this looks like a path going up there. And so I could get a lead into the artwork by coming out round here with some colour. That's something to decide later. Okay, so on here, this looks nice now. It looks like it's going into this. And the water down here looks too bright. So what I'm going to do is do this blue that I put here over that water in places, so that that calms that water down. You see some bright blue, but very little. Okay, so now we're working in through here. I'm not sure about that. Don't like that much. So maybe I'll go over that and see what happens. It can look like it's just under the water if I just take it out. I think that's better that it takes it out, or it could be like the algae that's in the water that's green, and then if I drop that in here, that'll just go over it slightly and come around the outside edge of the water. Okay, now the water has ripples in it there. It's actually rippling around. Take that out. And so I won't do a lot, just with a rigger, I think. Just with a light blue, and just do the pattern on the water. It's just a wriggly pattern here. Just where the water's come down. And then there's a tree. There's a little bit of a branchy tree that's coming out from underneath the rocks here. Do I want it there? I'll do it that on the path. So I'll wet that first. That's a good way to get your stems and trunks to go onto the ground, is to wet that area first. So it doesn't matter where I put it, it's just going to run there before it comes up, which is there. Oh, cool, that's thick. Didn't want it that thick. Okay, so if I don't want it, no, I'll leave it. It'll give me something to come forward with the strength of that over to here, but if I wanted to take it off, I'd quickly take it off with a tissue and not leave it. Okay, so that's got parts of that, and that's got some green on it, but it's actually mirrored in the water, so that would be going up to about there, and then you'd probably see just a couple of these out off the edge of the water. And that has green on it. Dry, light. And I don't know what colour I get when I hit the water, but I just do it and see what I get. that can come down there a little bit so that it brings it onto this area here and shows it clearer. Looking at the shape, you'd see a bit in the water there, not much. It's probably wet there anyway, that won't hurt. And so you see the reflection of that. I don't like too much about what they did. If I want this to look like a path, I could basically put more in there. I still think I need to let this go, but there was, I think, a Gymea lily in there. So I've just got I've got Crimson Lake. It's like a deep pink, and I'm just going to put it on that, just the brush mark, and then it's got a little bit of Windsor red just in the top. Oh, that's too much. Don't do that. A little bit of Windsor red, and what I was saying about if things are too much, it's probably better just to give it give it a dab and take it right out. That's even better. Okay, the path. I need to make a decision about the path, whether the path has any colour on it or whether it stays white. The whole lot looks a little bit bleached, but that's all right. It has a lot of strength in places. The path. Oh, why not? Why not? If I don't like it, don't like it. Okay, so the path would have some colour on it through here. Wet it first to insurance policy about what it's going to be like. Just wet it down. And then that means I don't have to put too much on it, because if I don't like it, I can take it back off. And so I'll start about there. Put some on. And it's raw sienna, so it looks bright on the camera, but it's not that bright. So that can just come down and get light as it comes down to here. Don't like it that much. So what I'll do is put some of the dirty colours in it that I had. Just put some of the colours of the artwork in it. Okay, now I have to decide what that is, whether it's actually just white or whether it's got the same colours in it. If I put the same colours in it, it'll bring it forward. I'll just take the whiteness off the page to start with. Drop some raw sienna in it. I'll match it up with the other part there. And then possibly just bring some of the dirty greens in here and just anchor it to the page with just every now and again a spot of green. Now, whether it extend out is the question of what I need to do with it. And maybe, just maybe, I've got some corners here that I can put round it and have a look and see. There's one corner. So I don't mind that side of it, but maybe this side could be reduced and bring it in further, and that would make it a little bit better in the side. Even though I don't like square, that would make it square. I could come out a little bit further to have a bit more on that side, but I've lost some of the paper, and sometimes that can be a great thing. Even coming up to there, that would anchor it to the page. That would be interesting as well. The question I had about reducing the size of this page has led me to the idea that I think this area here would be lovely as a rock that's actually matching these rocks. So when I do something in an artwork, I try and repeat it to balance it out. So if I wet the back of this section of the page, back out this way, and just wet that area there, just keep it damp. Sometimes you need to wet more of the page than what you want to, because it will actually, I'll just relieve that as well. It really will change the artwork if you get places. I noticed up the top corner here, I've got a mark there, but if I just brush that, that'll come out too. Okay, so I've got the paper damp. I just saw a white patch there that's dry. And bring some colour in there, which is the colour of the rocks, which was burnt sienna and indethrin to make a blue-grey. I'll bring that in and bring it into where the rock is, which is here. Just keep that edge as close to that as I can. Okay, that'll do. And it's coming in a bit further anyway because of the fact of where I left it, where I actually, I didn't sort of make sure I didn't go over that edge. I'll bring this out the way that I want it to look like it's going, which is out here. And probably a bit further, so I'm just putting water on the brush because it'll show slightly, but when it dries it won't have much there. That's just coming out about there. Now even on here, if there's salt on there, it will do something as well. So then I'll put salt on that area. Salt right the way out because even that area there will make patterns. Change the way my wrist is. That makes a difference as to what direction the salt goes coming out of those beads. Salt work's better done in dry weather rather than wet weather. Now that'll dry and I'll be able to see what it does then. Still putting more on. That'll do. I think that gives it a nice flow to the edge of the page that way and brings you into the area that I want you to view is in here, in that third of the page. As you can see, the salt work that I did on the edge of the page has led to a really nice movement into the artwork. It's actually taken up more of the actual space as well. That can still be changed by the size of a mat that goes on it. But I think that's actually improved the flow of the artwork, which comes back. Your mind can actually make up part of the rocks here. And the line down through there, that if it was a little bit darker, it could be more of a problem, but that's easily fixed by just actually taking some water and just rub in a couple of places and just soften that line out. So the line really now doesn't have the straight line in it, it just softens it. Okay, so earlier I did say that this artwork, when it's completely dry, would be actually sprayed front and back with Microdor matte spray, and it's a permanent spray. So that will protect it and stop it from re-wetting, because salt on the paper will re-wet as the weather declines into wet days. You'll get the paper to actually soften. Okay, thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the artwork.